The human body, it's so amazing how it's designed and put together. But have you ever wondered how all the organs and muscles and bones and ligaments function together so well?
Do you think the human body looks like it was randomly assembled, or do you think it looked like it was intentionally designed?
It would make sense if it was intentionally designed, because what little I know about anatomy and stuff like that, literally everything has a purpose, every part of your body has a purpose.
I would say there's a lot of randomness in it, and there's a lot of things that look kind of random.
There's no way I can think it's random chance. Definitely design.
If you believe in evolution and stuff like that, it might not be very intricately designed.
I have no clue. I'm a finance major.
Was the machine that we know of as the human body just the product of random chance over millions of years? Or is it the product of a divine mind that designed everything? A lot of people think we're the products of slow random chance, a process called Darwinian evolution.
Could you explain evolution in one sentence?
Genetic change in populations that persist over time.
Over time, we change and develop to adapt to challenges.
Survival of the fittest.
But does that make sense of the order we see in the human body? Can random changes really account for such an intricately designed machine? Dr. Jason Lisle, astrophysicist and avid Star Trek fan. Dr. Lisle has a PhD in astrophysics from the University of Colorado. He's well acquainted with theories on the origin of life.
Can we just start off by saying, what is a good definition of evolution?
Well, the word just means change, and we all agree things change, so there's no doubt there. But usually when they're talking in the sense of biology, they're usually referring to Darwinian or neo-Darwinian evolution, which is the idea that all forms of life on Earth have a common ancestor and that they've descended from something like a bacterium that over millions of years of mutations and natural selection eventually became everything else. Right. So in that view, you are related to broccoli. That's your distant cousin.
From the beginning of time, there was the one cell that survived all the Earth being a hot, fiery mass. And then from that, it came to bacteria, plants, animals, and then from that, us.
Do you think that there's any evidence for the large-scale evolution that people claim to believe in?
First of all, we don't find in the fossil record, we don't find evidence of one basic kind becoming another. We certainly find variation within a kind. There's different varieties of elephants, some of which are now extinct. We believe mammoths are part of the elephant kind. They're genuinely related to modern elephants, but that particular variety's gone extinct. And you find different varieties of horse, and the way their feet are a little bit different, the number of ribs are a little bit different, and so on, but they're still horses.
Yeah.
So variation within a kind, we find that all throughout the fossil record. But we don't find evidence of a reptile becoming a bird, despite what they claim. It's not there.
That sounds like the missing link to me, right?
Yeah.
So why have evolutionists and scientists not found that missing link that they're looking for?
Yeah, and it's not just the missing link. They're all missing,
right.
Really.
Okay.
But you'd expect to find one basic kind becoming another. We don't find that. Think about invertebrates, for example. Invertebrates have the hard parts on the outside, the soft parts on the inside. We're vertebrates. We have the hard bones inside and then the soft parts on the outside. That's a complete revolution in structure. Now, you'd think, well, that would take millions of years to turn one kind into a completely different other kind, where all the in-between kinds, where the hard parts are starting to move to the outside. You don't find that in the fossil record. It's not there. You find billions upon billions of invertebrates throughout the fossil record. You find vertebrates, but you don't find anything in between. They're just not there. Darwin was aware of that, and he said, well, we just haven't found that many fossils yet.
Sure.
And he expected that you'd find these transitional forms as time progressed, but we haven't.
We all kind of evolved from the same thing. I mean, we're all fish things in the sea at one time, then we evolved to be on land, so.
So where did you learn this stuff?
Science courses. Can't really think of anything.
Okay.
Yeah, anything else.
2,000 years ago, the Bible addressed the issue of unbelief. The book of Romans says, "Wicked people suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because He has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God." 20th century philosopher Aldous Huxley pretty much said the exact same thing. For myself, as no doubt for most of my contemporaries, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation. The liberation we desired was from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom.
Most people assume that evolution is the only rational explanation, right? Do you think evolution is rational or irrational?
I don't believe it's rational. I don't believe that there are good reasons to believe it. People who believe in evolution, most of them haven't really thought it through. Most of the people that I interact with, they believe evolution because their teachers taught it to them. And their teachers, you ask them, they believe it because their teachers taught it to them. They don't have good independent reasons. And then if I ask them, well, what's your specific evidence? Sometimes they'll say, well, fossils. And I'll say, well, what fossils do you think prove evolution? And then they can't give me an answer. They believe it because other people believe it. And then the very few that are aware that there's really not good evidence for evolution, they believe it because the alternative is too horrible for them to accept, that God created. They just don't want to believe that.
Do you matter? What's your best argument for human rights? Why does human life matter more than zebras or even a bouquet of flowers for that matter? Some people might say that we don't. Humans don't matter any more than cats or dogs or cockroaches. In the Darwinian worldview, we're just animals who sprang from non-living stardust. We are rocks with legs. Does that worldview have anything good to say about the value of human life? Let's take a deeper look at the consequences of evolutionary thinking and where it's led the men who believed it the most.
When we apply those ideas of natural selection to our social environment, that becomes what was known as social Darwinism. So do you think we have any of the effects of social Darwinism today? Do we still see that?
Racism is an aspect of social Darwinism. Charles Darwin was a racist. There's no doubt about that. He believed that the Caucasians were the most evolved race and so on, and that stems from his faulty view of origins. If we really are just rearranged pond scum, if we're just evolved animals, then some people are more evolved than others. And so why not treat certain groups of people that you believe are less evolved, why not treat them like animals?
So as an atheist, how do you explain things like racism and sexism, and why are they wrong?
I think it's just, as humans, it's always like a survival kind of thing, that like everyone's a little genetically different, but that doesn't make us like different as humans.
Why do I believe that things like racism and sexism are wrong? You're really putting me on the spot here. This is tough.
It's really random. I could have been born a girl just as like evenly the chance that I was born a guy, right? So if you really are judging somebody based on something they can't control, that's not really being fair to them.
In the Christian worldview, there's no such thing as race other than the human race. We're all descended from Adam and Eve, and therefore we're all equal before God. We're all made in His image and have equal value before the law of God. But if you reject that, if you believe in evolution, then all sorts of other wrong views will necessarily, logically follow from that, including things like eugenics and some of these horrible evils that we're seeing in our society today.
The historical roots of abortion were eugenics, and they were social Darwinism, right?
Yeah. They used to even teach that embryology recapitulates phylogeny. The unborn child goes through the different stages of evolution. It goes through a fish stage and then these other, an amphibian stage and so on. Well, that's not true. There's no biological basis for that. Human beings are human beings from the beginning. They have the DNA of human beings. They don't ever develop gills or anything like that. No, that's not true. But nonetheless, you'll read that in even some of the textbooks today occasionally will still have that. It's just more like an animal. It's more like a fish. And people used to justify abortion that way.
What is inside of a pregnant woman's womb?
The embryo, right?
Is that embryo a human being?
He's going to be a human being.
Do you think that fetus is a human being?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you consider yourself pro-life or pro-choice?
It depends on the situation. Always situational.
It's the start of a human being, but it can't think or comprehend anything.
So do you think a person has to think or comprehend to be valuable?
No.
God looks at children far differently than we do in our society. You don't want children. That's going to be an inconvenience to you, so we'll abort those and so on. That's horrible, whereas children are a blessing from God. Today the conversation has shifted and it's just become accepted. Most people today recognize that an unborn child is a human being, but they just don't feel that it's wrong. They used to use evolution to argue for that, and now it's to the point where it's become so accepted they don't need to bother anymore.
It seems like a lot of the people who say that natural selection is how we got here are some of the same people who try to help people who are weak and try to help people with their homework, and it doesn't seem to square up with what they say they believe.
It's an inconsistency in their thinking. On the one hand, we know we should help people. It's built into us, and that's because they're made in the image of God.
Sure.
And so are we, and so we should help them. But on the other hand, if evolution were true, then hey, you're actually preventing our species from improving by helping the weak to survive, because evolution's all about the strong dominating the weak. And the more consistent evolutionists act that way, believe it or not. There are some that say, yeah, the weaker, they should be left to die. You should sterilize people that have these conditions and so on. Hitler took that to an extreme. He thought, well, these group of people, these are preventing our species from continuing. That was a rational application of an evolutionary worldview, really.
The truth is, whether you believe in a godless evolutionary system or that God directed creation, both worldviews require faith. The question then is, which faith is correct, and what are the consequences for believing the wrong thing? If evolution is true and God isn't real, then we don't stand to lose much. We all end up in the darkness of oblivion. But if God is real and He designed us, then we are accountable to Him for our behavior. The Bible paints a picture like a courtroom scene where people line up to be judged by the judge of all of heaven and earth, and guilty criminals will end up going to hell. If that's true, we have a lot to lose. Don't you think it's worth your time to consider the arguments for God?